Castillo. I am with the Albuquerque Church of God, and this is how we did a reset of the church. Our board asked us to look at the church and its health to see what needed to be improved and to get a state of where we were. We took the continual service improvement approach. Just like when you get to a mall and you look at the map, the first thing you look for is where you're at. The second thing you look for is where you want to go. And the last thing that you find out is how would you get to where you want to go. In order for the church in Albuquerque to understand where we were, we did a SWOT analysis. This is an analysis that helps you understand what your weaknesses are, your strengths, opportunities, and threats. This is a very self-introspective view of where you really are. Without the view of outsiders, you need to be able to have a mature view of what strengths, what is working well in your church, what weaknesses are coming to your church, areas that you wish to improve, what opportunities are in your church. We could do something. There is something on the way that we could provide for the church or improve to make the church better. And lastly, what threats are there? Was there something that is scaring you, something that is happening to the church that might be of negative effect to the church? Once we went through the process of sitting down with the board and the elders of the church and understanding what everything that fell into these areas, then you take your strengths and you make sure you continue to do them. You take the weaknesses and you try to find out how to convert a weakness into an opportunity, and if possible, convert it into a strength. You realize what your weakness is and how would you work out of that weakness. You look at the opportunities, and the question is, every time you look at the opportunities, is how can we capitalize on it? If there's something coming, if there is a service that is coming down the pike, or if there's something that a preacher that could come give us a workshop that would improve an area, how do you capitalize? How do you make sure that that service or that opportunity is captured in the church? Lastly, what we did is we looked at the threats. The threats, you have to take a risk-based approach to understand on how you can either divert the threat, remove the threat, or accept the threat so that you know what to do when the adverse behavior comes to the church. I'd like to focus on two areas of the SWOT analysis, what they revealed to the church and how we capitalized on one of them and how we made sure that we diverted the weakness or the threat that was in the church. The first was a strength. The strength of the Church of God Seventh-day has been, for many years, the ministries. The ministries of the Church of God help us to make sure that everybody feels involved, to help us to understand what people's gifts are and then capitalize on them, making sure that they feel not only that they're contributing and honoring God every day of the week, but also that those gifts are not being wasted sitting somewhere, that the gifts are actually edifying the church, just like the scripture tells us. From that, we needed to make it stronger. So now that we have ministries, we made sure that we created a process, a full-out, written-out process with its inputs, outputs, and how do we get the process, the output that we need. What this brought about is that we now have a election process. Every 6 months, we talk about what leadership is in a church, biblical leadership found in Titus and in Timothy, and then we have the church elect the presidents that will be working in all of the ministries of the church. This has been tremendously helpful to us because it is the church electing the presidents, making sure that the church then supports the ideas and the movements and projects that each one of the ministries bring as concepts to the service. The next thing that we do is that we ask each president to be committed to the church. This is part of what made our core team grow in Albuquerque, helping us to realize that the people that were going to be in leadership needed to function as leaders at all times. It doesn't matter if the couples ministry is doing nothing this Saturday, that president is still being viewed by the rest of the team as somebody that can be an example to the church. Therefore, attendance, participation, cooperation with other ministries becomes critical. All ministries in Albuquerque must work together as a cloth or a fabric, that it doesn't really line out which one thread is the one that is instrumental in the success, but the entire church is represented. If we give out one meal to somebody that needs it, that person represented the entire church in that one giveaway. Or if we're taking the kids out to the park on a Sunday, the entire church is represented in paying attention for the growth and development of our kids. We have internal conversations with all of the presidents. There are 24 presidents, and the leadership of the church has to have conversations with them. They're 30-minute conversations, and they usually happen right before one of the services, whether it be Wednesday night or Friday. When we have the meeting with them is not as important as what we discuss. It's very pointed questions, and there are only 3 questions. So we sit down, we pray, and we ask the president, what is going well in your ministry? What has not gone well and we can improve? And lastly, how can the leadership of the church help your ministry succeed before your term is up? This provides a plethora of information so that our church can continue to grow. We find out things that we didn't know were happening. Simple things and all the way up to difficult things to solve, but it's better to know and unearth the errors or the problems, the barriers, so that we can remove them and help all of the ministries continue to work and continue to function, helping other under pastors or under leaders continue to work with their services and ministries. The last thing that we do with the ministries is that we help the presidents measure their accomplishment. So at the beginning of the ministry of charity for the community, these people go out and look for opportunities to help families that are in need, whether it be food or to pay their bills, whatever the case might be. We set a goal. What is it that you're trying to do? And if they tell us that they want to give out 100 boxes of food to families that people meet, then we help them map out the success path, which means by the end of month 3, you need to have given away 50 boxes. By the end of month 5, you need to be at 80% of your goal so that you can accomplish this and not try to rush at the end or give a lesser quality of service. That is one example, but it's happening with all the ministries, and putting it on paper and talking about it helps all of us ensure the success of each of those ministries. The SWOT analysis is not something to be taken lightly. In the book of Revelations, chapter 2, we find 7 churches that are being told their strengths, their opportunities, their weaknesses, and their threats. And each one of those churches is being told to do something with that. This is how the Albuquerque Church came about the idea of moving the concept that is used in a business strategy meeting into a church-wide improvement, or at least realization of our status. This has helped us tremendously to just know where we are as a church and understand if we need to keep moving forward or if we decide that we've reached the goal and we need to focus our efforts and our cycles in something different. One of the threats that was understood by an elder of the church or presented by an elder of the church is that now that we have 24 ministries on Sabbath, the church gets full and people are moving and working and they are in different areas, and this is great because it does produce involvement and it helps everybody feel that they are contributing to the honor and glory of God. However, the question was presented as, are we losing focus of who we're supposed to be as a church? From that, we asked ourselves, do we need to pause to make sure that our doctrine is still well understood, to make sure that we have a mission and vision, and to make sure that our bylaws are written down and cemented so that we can use them from here on out? We first started by asking the church if this could be done, if we could stop all of the ministries, restructure the way our Sabbath was working, and only work on mission and vision, work on bylaws, and work on the doctrine. So it was accepted. We moved some of our service ideas to Friday night service. We moved the Sabbath school from 11 a.m. to 9 in the morning. We then worked at 11 in the morning with the faith points. This comes straight from the book of This We Believe, and each Sabbath we covered one topic. If we had not finished with the topic, or if there was too many questions in that topic, we would allow ourselves to take a second Sabbath. But the structure was pretty cut and dry. 45 minutes, a member of leadership in our church would present the topic. Then we would stop the presentation and have a different brother come up to take questions and answers. We thought we were going to focus with the youth. We thought the youth would have questions, so we made sure that the questions were geared toward youth, but more than that, we needed the questions to come from the youth. So we started the services by ensuring that the younger members of our church, whether it be youth or newcomers to our church, recently baptized, would have an opportunity to ask questions. We would frame it such as, what kind of questions do you hear at home? What did you wonder when you heard about this first? Or, very simple, what questions do your friends have that they ask and you have not been able to answer? What that caused was a spirit of contribution from the church. Sometimes the questions that came up on the topic that we had studied were very cut and dry, very clear understanding. You need to read this other verse, and we would read it as a church so that everybody there, whether it be the person that asked the question or the person that was too shy to speak up, could still listen to the explanation. But eventually we discovered that other people that had been in church for a while were having questions, and not only questions, but more of testimonies. Testimonies like, I did that because I know that nobody here does that, or I know that everybody here does it, but I didn't understand that that was the reason why. So then we started to ensure that our church would have the why we do something before the how we do it. When you focus on why we do something, people will buy into it and be able to do it without whether people are watching or not. The second half of the Sabbath, we would focus on the mission, vision, and goals of the church. There's many reasons why we needed this, primarily because we had so many ministries working and so many ideas coming to us that it was hard for us to understand where we needed to fund the idea or dedicate the time if there was no funding needed. Both are great ideas, but which one do we select? So we stopped and we went through the questions of what are our values, where do we want to go, what do we want to be known for? But the real question when you want to write a mission is, why do we exist? Why do we exist? And not only why do we exist as a corporation, but why do we exist here in Albuquerque at this time, in this year, in this neighborhood? We worked through the ideas. We captured everybody's concept. This is something that has to be worked with your entire church. We felt as if the board worked on this in a vacuum and then brought it to the church and just gave it to them as information, it would feel like if that was the mission and vision of the board, not the church. And we have to have the buy-in of every one of our members so that when they see this in writing, they realize that that is our mission and vision. The vision answers a different question. The vision answers, where are we going? Mission, why do we exist? Vision, where are we going? So once you know why you exist, then you start to understand where do you want to go. And that is what helps you understand which project you're going to fund, what tools you're going to buy, what material and curriculum you're going to continue to use so that it helps you to get to the vision. Many of these things have been aided by the TVR program that comes to us in many different ways, but through the Sabbath School, understanding what kind of church we wanted to be and the church buying into it. So now we have a mission and a vision, but now we need goals. We continue to work every Sabbath. Sometimes it would take 2 or 3 Sabbaths to finalize the technicalities and the semantics of where the comma goes and where the period goes and what kind of word we want to use. Does it provoke emotion enough to be able to have something that is remembered by the church and that they can speak about it to anybody that they meet? But here we are. We're working on goals now. The church came to 2 goals. The first goal is to become a more mature church that resists, that is resilient to problems, and that can glorify God through any circumstance. The second goal is that 1% of Albuquerque knows of the existence of the Church of God Seventh Day in Albuquerque. An internal goal and an external goal. We then needed to come up with short-term goals that would get us to the long-term goal. So in order for 1% of Albuquerque to know of the Church of God Seventh Day, we broke it down like this. We have 100 members here. And if 100 members give out 1 invitation a month, then we would be giving out 1,200 invitations in a year. And if we do this to a brand new person or a unique person every time, every month, then for 5 years, we would reach our goal of 1% of Albuquerque being 6,000 people. 6,000 times somebody gets invited and they know where we are. This has been helping us to understand how do we measure the progress, where do we go, and how do we do it. The last thing that we worked on is the bylaws of the Church of God in Albuquerque. We were already stopped at a reset. We were already having the church stay in. The youth program didn't leave. The kitchen ministry didn't leave, so that we can have the most inclusiveness, or so that this project would be inclusive and all the people in Albuquerque would buy into what we were doing. The book of 1 Peter chapter 3 tells us to always be ready to present a defense for what we believe. The Albuquerque Church has now stopped to ensure that the brothers that are playing the music know that the reason to come to church is not to play an instrument, but rather that they come to honor and worship God, whether they're holding an instrument or not. The leadership in the church has a passion to make sure that we understand the why before the how, or the why before the what. We had to stop. We stopped for 6 months of being busy so that we can ensure that anybody that is participating in whatever ministry it is knows why we worship, why we serve, why we bring the food, and why we take care of the children. So long as the why is constant, the how will come after. How we worship God can be through sweeping a sidewalk, giving food out, or taking care of the youth program. That changes, so long as the church never changes its why. Jesus is the why. That is why we are here. That is why we serve, and that is why we will continue to serve regardless of circumstances. May God bless you.